Okay, so I'm going to show everybody a quick tutorial on how to punctuate adjective clauses and what really the difference between a punctuated adjective clause is and one that is not punctuated. So, looking at number 1 and number 2, number 1 says Mrs. Smith, who works at the market, is my neighbor. And number 2 says the woman who works at the market is my neighbor. Can you guess which one of these needs commas around the adjective clause? Well, let's look at the adjective clause first. It is the same in both of these. It is who works at the market, who works at the market. Now, if you guess number 1 for the sentence that needs commas or needs to be punctuated, you would be correct. We need a comma after Mrs. Smith and a comma after market. The reason why we need this is because the information between the commas in the adjective clause is not what we would say is non-essential or not essential. To identify Mrs. Smith, it's not essential. We already know who this person is. This information is helpful, but it does not give us a necessary information to identify who this person is. So we would still know who Mrs. Smith was without this information here. Also, Mrs. Smith is my neighbor. We could take this away, this adjective clause, and we would still be able to make a statement that made sense. When we look at number 2, down here, we see the woman who works at the market is my neighbor. Now, ask yourself, can we take this clause, who works at the market, and remove it and still know who the woman is? The woman is my neighbor. And the person who hears that would say, which woman? Well, that means this adjective clause is essential. Must be there. It is essential to understand which woman. So, if it is essential, we use no commas. If it is non-essential, like this one, we do use commas. One thing to remember when you're doing this is that if you do use the commas and you have a non-essential adjective clause, be very careful. You cannot use that here as the subject pronoun. You can only use who for people, and you can only use which for things. You cannot use that after the commas. So hopefully this little tutorial helped you with one way of thinking about punctuating adjective clauses. Check for the next tutorial, punctuating adjective clauses number 2, to learn about the other way to use punctuation with adjective clauses.